Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. My salutations to Swami Kuvalyananda Ji, who brought the science and tradition of yoga together, and because of whom we all have congregated online to discuss the therapeutic aspects of yoga. My respects and gratitude to Swami Maheshananda Ji. My respects and gratitude to Justice Shri Krishna. My respects and gratitude to my father, Shri O.P. Tiwari Ji, because of whom I'm here. Otherwise, I would not have been here. And my thanks and gratitude to all of you who are joining this session online. I am deeply honored and humbled to be in the presence of such great lineup of experts and speakers who are going to be talking about yogic therapy from a medical point of view, from a traditional point of view, from a critical point of view. And as far as I am concerned, I can only say that I know not. And that is one of the reasons I consider myself to be a student of yoga always a student of yoga. But having said that, I'm here today to talk about the concepts and principles of therapy in yogic texts. So what I'm going to talk about is not something which is coming from me. I will be basically restating what has been said in the Indian system of thought in general, and yoga in particular. I will also be restating the interpretation given by Swami Kuvalyananda Ji when it comes to the therapeutic aspects of yoga. So, if there is a lack of clarity in what I say, what I speak, the fault is not of the text or of Swami Kuvalyananda Ji. The fault is mine and perhaps the way I have understood the texts and the interpretations of Swami Kuvalyananda Ji. As my introduction said, that I grew up in Kaivalyadhama. And growing up in Kaivalyadhama, I was witness to the first yogic hospital in the world. And in my summer break, my father had me volunteer there, work there, for the summer break. And I have seen Swami Kuvalyananda Ji's vision of yogic therapy being carried out there. Practices that were based on sound science, yogic practices based on sound science were being applied in the yoga hospital. Be it asanas, be it pranayama, be it kriyas, be it meditational techniques, so on and so forth. But it was the first kind of yogic hospital in the world, first of its kind. But we need to keep one thing in mind, and this is extremely important when it comes to yogic therapy research that is going on in yoga and the implementation of research when it comes to yogic practices. Because we all know Swami Kuvalyananda Ji as a scientific researcher. But it seems that Swami Kuvalyananda Ji also believed that scientific research is incomplete without philosophical research. Scientific research and philosophical research are the two wings which make the bird of yoga soar very high. Because if we are going to implement a practice, where is that practice coming from? How is it done? Take, for example, asanas. So Swamiji and the research that was carried out subsequently at Kaivalyadhama tried to show the difference as to what is the effect of asanas when they are done as an isometric exercise. What is the effect of asanas when it's done as an isotonic exercise? And what is the effect of asanas when it is done as per the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali? And again, I'm not going to be redundantly going deep into the Yoga Sutras, but very simple. For example, when Patanjali talks about asanas, stillness and comfort in a pose is asana. Very simple. How is it done? It is done with minimal effort, only effort that is needed, without exertion, without distraction. Number 3, if asanas are done as per the protocol, what is the effect? They remove conflict. Sthir sukham asanam prayatna shaithilyananta samapatibhyam tato dvandvan abhighatah. Now conflict is imbalance. Balance equals ease. Imbalance equals disease. So if you look at it from that point of view, asanas remove diseases only if done as per protocol, not like exercises. Hence, scientific research has to be supported by philosophical research. Because that's where you determine. Nowadays, people are seeing yogic techniques in their dreams and say, I've seen this technique in my dream. That's the reason I'm going to teach it like this. No, that's not the way. And that's one of the reasons you see hundreds and thousands of unsubstantiated techniques of yoga floating around. And that's where the importance of philosophical research also comes into play. Give you another example. Shitali Pranayama. Swamiji determined that in Hatha Pradipika, the technique of Shitali Pranayama was incomplete. So what did he do? He adapted the technique from Shiva Samhita. So just to make a point, scientific research and philosophical research go hand in hand. Now, let us come to the main topic, which is concept and principles of therapy in yogic texts. So before, again, going more deep into the subject, let us see what concept means. Now, if you look at the dictionary meaning of concept, it says a general idea or a notion is what concept means according to dictionary. Maybe, may not be substantiated. In Sanskrit, Hindi, Marathi, sankalpana, dharana as in point of view, not dharana as in Ashtanga Yoga dharana. This is what concept means. And if you look at concepts of yogic therapy, from texts, it is inspired by the Indian system of thought. It is inspired by the Vedas. It is inspired by the Upanishads, because yoga, being one of the Shatadarshan, one of the 6 systems of applied philosophy. I don't call it darshan philosophy per se, because Indian systems of philosophies are applied philosophies. So being one of the 6 systems of philosophy is inspired by the Indian system of thought, namely Vedas and Upanishads. Now, and hence it has derived the concept from these texts. Now, if you look at these texts, and if you look at some of the verses from the text, for example, you start with Mandukya Upanishad, the chant that we always say, and besides many other Upanishads. They say, Swastina Indro Vruddhashravaha, Swastina Pusha Vishwavedaha, or Bhadran Karane Vishrunayama Devaha. Now, implicitly, these verses talk about health and removal of disease. Thirai angais tushtavan sastanu vihi. May the body be fit. May we be healthy. May our senses be tuned. Now, for example, you go to Garuda Purana, or we go to the Shukla Yajurveda Samhita said by Uvata, Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit duk abhav bhave. Let us be disease-free. Let the suffering and misery be removed from our lives. So this is the concept from which the therapeutic aspects have been derived, be it in the Indian system of thought, may it be Ayurveda or yoga. Now let us come to the next point. Principle. Now, when it comes to principle, the dictionary meaning of principle is a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as a foundation of a system. Fundamental truth. Something that is validated. Now, if we look at yoga, it's an ancient science. And being an ancient science, the older the science is, the older the system of thought is, the more it is challenged. And yoga has gone through these challenges through its lifetime, but yoga has come unscathed from these challenges, critiques, tests. Why? Because the effect of practices have been validated and revalidated time after time, generations after generations, when it comes to psychophysiological benefits. Although psychophysiological benefits are incidental, but every generation on two, you have someone walk in this earth who has even validated the spiritual aspect of yoga. So that is what principle means, something that lays on a solid foundation. And when it comes to therapy, if we look at our Indian system of thought, the origins, you can say, is Atharva Veda. And the protocol of therapy has been laid out in one of the Upavedas of Atharva Veda called Ayurveda. So principles of health in the Indian system of thought you can find them in Ayurveda. Now, when we look at yoga, although as Shri Sudhir Tiwari mentioned, that yoga and other speakers mentioned that yoga's main goal is spiritual in nature, but therapy is incidental. And for that reason, yoga also has inherently its own principles of therapy, which have been later developed by eminent yogis. But I remember, as Swami Digambar Ji used to say, he says the real yoga is dharana, dhyana, samadhi. That is the real yoga. But in order to do the real yoga, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, one has to be behaviorally fit. One has to have the correct attitude. One has to have physical fitness. One should be physically fit and sound. I don't mean fit by having muscles. I mean efficient, disease-free. And one has to be psychologically calm and clean. And for that reason, yamas, niyamas, asanas, and pranayama are done. And what is it essentially? To make oneself calm, sound, physically healthy, mentally healthy, having the behaviors, our attitudes corrected. Now, this is what therapy entails. Although, if you look at the word therapy, the Sanskrit equivalent is chikitsa. You will not find the word chikitsa in many of the yogic texts, or any of the yogic texts. The word chikitsa could be found in Upanishads. The word chikitsa could be found in Puranas. The word chikitsa can be found in Ayurveda for sure. But in yoga, you don't find the word chikitsa. But the word is implied. Now, I'm going to tell you the way Swami Kuvalyananda Ji looks at therapy in yoga. Swami Kuvalyananda has written a masterpiece with Dr. S.L. Vinekar called Yogic Therapy. And it is a timeless text because the terminology in the text may have changed. Or, the terminology of 60s and terminology of now may have changed. Words may have changed. But the principle on which this book, Yogic Therapy, is based has not changed. And in this book, Swamiji has somehow tried to equate the concepts of Patanjali Yoga and tried to interpret it from a modern scientific point. And as it was said, as Swami Maheshananda said, that the root cause of disease is the mind. A disturbed mind. And Swami Kuvalyananda says, what disturbs this mind? What disturbs the mind is the external and internal stimuli, which Swami Kuvalyananda Ji calls kleshas, chapter 2, sutra 3 in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. These kleshas are the external and internal stimuli that disturb the mind. Now, this disturbance of the mind results in what is called vikshepas. Vikshepas are psychophysiological disturbances. Sutra number 30, chapter number 1. So these mental disturbances give rise to these psychophysiological disturbances. Now, I would like to make a point here. Vikshepas are vyadhi, sthana, sanshaya, pramada, lasya, meaning they are general, for example, imbalance, sloth, addiction, lack of clarity, physical laziness, lack of enthusiasm, This is what results. Now, what Swami Kuvalyananda says, these are the first symptoms of diseases, not aches and pains, not unhealthy liver. This comes later. The first symptoms of disease are vikshepas. And I was reading an article by Swami Kuvalyananda Ji, which was written in 1933, addressed the therapeutical aspects of yoga was addressed in that. And Swamiji says these vikshepas are the first symptoms. They have to be taken care of. What does Patanjali say? Patanjali says these vikshepas can be prevented. However, even if you end up having them, they can be removed. So that's the seed of therapy in the Yoga Sutras. Now, when you look at how do you prevent vikshepas, chapter 1, sutra number 27 to 29, tasya vachaka pranavaha tajjapas tadartha bhavanam tatah pratyak chetana adhigamo antaraya abhavascha. By practice, it looks like a simple technique, but it works, has been validated and revalidated. It prevents these first manifestations of disease. Now, God forbid, you start having these symptoms. What do? Swamiji, then he says, Sutra number 33 to 39, a one-pointed approach to certain practices. This is how these first symptoms can be prevented or dealt with all sincerity. Now, if they are not, then what happens? Then this leads to mental distress, dukkha, depression, daurmanasya. And combination of this leads to angamejayatva, which is basically disturbance in the tonic, rhythmicity of the body and its organs, giving rise to several diseases, be it metabolic in nature, be it functional in nature, or be it infectious in nature or psychosomatic in nature. Now, how Swamiji talks about it from a scientific point of view, I've understood it, and I think I've understood it, and I've tried to put it into my words, but my words don't do justice to it, what Swamiji has said. So I'm going to read it verbatim from his book, Yogic Therapy. Swamiji says, according to yoga, mind has a very significant role to play, not only in psychosomatic diseases, but also in every other form of disease, including acute one. Mind, when it is disturbed, may make the body prone to attacks by external organisms by lowering general resistance, and also bring about incoordination between various organs, thus lowering the efficiency of the body itself. How this happens is explained by yoga. Every psychophysiological disturbance, vikshepa, every emotion, especially a negative and a destructive one, apart from causing distress and depression, dukkha and daurmanasya, also interferes with the tonic rhythm of the muscles and the blood vessels, giving rise to angamajayatva and disturbance of respiration, swasha prashwasa. The disturbance of the tonic rhythm of the muscles, angamajayatva, according to yoga, proves to be practically a trigger for starting the chain reaction. Every disturbance of the respiratory rhythm, in part due to angamajayatva only. How rational is this concept? It can be gauged when we visualize the physiological effect of this process. Any sudden change or increase in the muscle tone is bound to make higher demand on circulation, respiration, sugar metabolism, and other metabolisms to feed the muscle better to maintain the required tone. If along with this, there's also a general constriction of blood vessels in the state of emotion, this will tax the heart, lungs all the more. They will have to work against the resistance offered by the narrowed vessel. To meet this demand, the autonomic nervous system as well as the endocrinal system will be placed in a different gear, and there will be higher adrenosympathetic activity. If the process is continued long enough, the thyroid will also be stimulated to further action. The chain of disturbance does not end here. The process not only affects the skeletal musculature, but also the body as a whole. Thus, the contractile tissue that goes to form various internal organs, like intestines, heart, so on and so forth, is affected by it. This gives rise to disturbance in the behavior of internal organs as well. Now, again, this is functional disease, and changes our entire postural substate. If the process goes on for a long time, chronically, it may give rise to congestion and stagnation if the tone decreases and tissues become sluggish, or abnormal wear and tear if the tone increases. This, along with the disturbance in glandular secretions affecting the body fluid, would make the body easily prone to attack by foreign organisms, various infectious disease, or give rise to very chronic functional and metabolic disorder. Now, this is the scientific explanation given by Swamiji. How do we overcome that? Foundations of therapies by Swamiji are three. He says, cultivating correct psychological attitudes by means of practicing yamas and niyamas. Number two, reconditioning the neuromuscular and the neuroglandular systems by practicing of asanas and pranayama. The cleansing the internal organs, cleansing the body by means of kriyas, proper diet, and addition to meditational techniques. Now, these are the three pillars, according to Swami Kuvalyananda Ji, based on which the therapy should be designed, because it's a holistic therapy. It's not a piecemeal solution. You don't have an asana for your lungs or pranayama for your heart and lungs. The approach is total, because you're not dealing just with the disease. You're trying to do therapy to the entire person, not just the organ. So this is as far as the approach based on Patanjali Yoga Sutra is concerned. Now, when you come to Hatha Yoga and later yogis, the approach is different. Now, here Swamiji has explained the efficacy of yoga or yoga therapy based on the Yoga Sutras and scientific research, modern scientific research. The Hatha Yogis of from the 8th century to the 16th, 17th centuries, they explained the benefits of the practice based on Ayurveda. How do yogic practices deal with therapy based on Ayurvedic concepts? So, what does Ayurveda say? Dhatu samya tatra prayojanam. Harmonious functions between the different aspects of the body. What does yoga say? Samatvam yogam uchyate. Balance is the basis of both. Now, when you come to individual practices, Hatha Pradipika, chapter number 1, verse number 17. Hatasya pratmang gatva asanam purvam uchyate kuryat tadasanam stharyam arogyam, removes diseases. Chapter number 3, verse number 16. Pranayamena yuktena sarva roga kshayo bhaved. By practicing pranayam, the diseases are gotten rid of. So the beauty of yoga is it adapts to any system, be it modern medicine or be it holistic Ayurvedic medicine. But yoga is experiential in nature. And I would like to conclude by saying that Swamiji said yoga is a holistic science. It should not be compartmentalized. It's science as a whole. So thank you so much, and thank you for listening to me. And all the best for the rest of the speakers. I'm looking forward to learn from them. Namaste.